Well, thank you for the invitation, Chico. As you said already, we're kind of, we will explain our story a little bit. That's something that we were discussing, like how we became what we are now and maybe what's the plan next. And I will introduce ourselves. This is Sana, and my name is Anna, and we are 11 partners. We are an international partnership now. We call ourselves partnership now, but as Chico said, we are and started as a kind of network, and by law we kind of changed our name from network into partnership because it's easier by law. So we are an international partnership of architects and urbanists with offices in London, Rotterdam, Hanover, Berlin, Salerno, and Oslo, as you can see. But we kind of all started in Hanover, so that was the base of the nucleus where we all started because we met each other as students, like more or less from the first day of our studies. So here you can see all of us and the places where we are. So we are, as I said, 11 partners, and we all work in flexible composed teams, and of course we are all very different in characters and type and whatever. And but it was just in the beginning, I think it was just the idea, maybe that's quite similar to what you are here at the moment, that we want to keep together after studying. So then we kind of said, okay, let's see what we can do. We found our name. Then we started all in Hanover, and yeah, this is the things what we are doing now and where we are now. Next. And I try to explain the quite weird name, city Förster. It's always funny in an international case because people don't really know how to say it. But it has a certain background because it's a kind of part of our idea of how we deal with city and architecture. It means that we kind of see the city as a whole ecosystem where different parts work with each other, and that's also the idea of how we design actually, because we never think of the final form or something like that, but we also see architecture and urbanism as a dynamic system where all parts kind of work with each other. So this claim of Jack Westerby is also the kind of interpretation of our name city and Förster. So it's not so much that Förster is concerning with trees, but how trees serve people, and that's the idea of our name. So as I explained earlier, from network to partnership for lower reason, it all began with the symposium we organized in 2004 when we all were students. It was a big international symposium we organized in our university in Hanover. And that was when it all started, that these loose ends that we were at that moment, like 11 persons working together since all our study time, although we were meanwhile all studying abroad as well. But coming back to Hanover at that time, being like half a year before we were doing our final project. And before we organized that thing, we said, okay, before we then just go and spread after doing our final project, we kind of want to articulate that we kind of as a network want to keep together. So this was kind of the initiative for us to say, okay, it's not only doing architecture and urbanism, and it's just also discussing about it. It's like the passion for this whole thing, like also being together as friends, but also working together as a more or less professional team at that time.
Yeah, and maybe it was also because we call it day off, because when we came back from abroad, we had a bit the feeling that the whole, what architects do is not what we thought or what we experienced in our study time, is what is up to date a little bit. I mean, we thought that what the architects do in focusing only on architecture is not what is needed in the future time to do as an architect, because you have to look at other disciplines as well. You have to work in more interdisciplinary, or to find the interaction between two other disciplines, and that would bring, that would be the change of our role as architects. So the people that we invited also, as you can see, is, Realities United, of course, is also an office that is not a traditional architect's office, but that is working also with media and interaction of architecture. So that is what we wanted to find out. So it was not only to work together, but also to experience a bit how our role as architects in the future could be, and that is what was interesting for us.
Because no one of us was really interested into going into a traditional architecture office, doing traditional,
Maybe we ended like this, but we
ended with this, but we never wanted, but whatever. So then, 2 weeks after, it was also like the thing that we could actually stay together and really work together was also a big fact of good luck. Because the first project was like after we all did our final project at university, like most of us in 2005, like 2 weeks later, one partner of us who was at the meantime doing his master in Rotterdam called us and said, well, I told somebody. He told him, Edi Rama, who is the mayor of Tirana in Albania, that he has a good working office in Germany. And Edi Rama said, well, if you have a good office, then why don't you work for me? And Edi Rama, the mayor of Tirana, I will explain a little bit the background. He was himself, like in his earlier life, an artist, but then he went into politics because he said, okay, I really have to do something for my city and my country, because in former times Albania was a communist country, and then the system of course changed, and what happened was that all the people from the countryside came into the city, and the whole city exploded. So there was like illegal housing, and the whole city, of course, during communist time was really run down. So he set up a program where he invited Förster, international artists, you can see that a little bit on side, to color the facades, just to trigger up a little bit the city. And then in the next step he said, okay, I will also invite international officers, and I don't care if they are really established or if they are just not. And I will ask them to do like reasonable planning for my city, because my own country is quite corrupt in only, the architecture urbanism system, he said, was quite corrupt because they were only interested at that time of making really fast, hard money. So what he said, okay, let's invite people to work for us, but then let my hometown city planners and architects do the architecture. So we planned like the first cases. So in the north of the city center, here's the city center of Tirana, and then the red dot up there. There were like 22 acres of nothing. There was nothing built on. That he said, okay, please set up a master plan for us. And we said, yeah, we can do that. But of course, we had never really heard of something like that. And we didn't really know what to do. But of course, we could do that. So this was our first network office excursion then, because of course we all were so excited and then went there, and this is what we found. So that was our site. And these were the expressions of the city that we met at that time, like in 2005. So there were a lot of weird structures. There was this old communist structure. There was a lot of illegal housing, and of course there were the first steps of this artist-related pimping up my city idea. Well, and then 4 weeks later we delivered this plan, and we worked together with the landscape architect. Then we suddenly had to deal with international urban laws, and that was also, of course, completely new, but
there were no laws. So
there were no laws, and we were kind of greenhorn enough to just work, and they asked us, like, how do you want to get paid? And they said, okay, do you want dollar or you want euro? And we said, well, maybe euro. And like...
We got dollar, right?
No, we got euro, but it was like a big sport bag that you understand, and we were really happy that we were able to bring that back home and by plane. So there was of course no contract, no nothing, but it was just the big adventure.
Yeah, I only got the lucky that we also had to bring home 5 liters self-burn.
Yeah, of course they were really friendly. So this was in April 2005, and then 4 weeks later we got the commission for our first house. It was a fact where they said, okay, please be finished in 4 weeks later, and it's 20,000 square meters. And this is, they found out then that the master plan we did was not able to be, legalized.
Yeah.
Because they found out that they sent us the wrong basis for doing this planning.
Yeah, nobody really knew who the land belonged to, and the lines for it belongs to this person or this, they changed like in 2 weeks' time. So we always had to adapt the plan, of course, because we cannot.
So, but this part that was kind of matching with the new lines. So then the first investor said, okay, it is matching, so you can actually realize this part of your planning because I don't care what's coming after me. So we said, okay, let's do this, 20,000 square meters, gross floor area, housing and commercial area in the ground floor, Green Fork. And what we did then, it's also, I mean, we worked together, as I said before, with landscape architects, and of course we had like friends who were more experienced from me, so we divided the site, and this design was from the more experienced architects, and this was our design. And we delivered that 4 weeks later, and then we didn't hear from them for 2 years. So everything was dead, the telephone line was dead, but 2 years later we got this photo from our landscape architect who said, well, you know what, your house is just being built at the moment. Did you know that? And we were like, well, no. Because of course we knew that they would then do that, but we were of course really surprised that after we delivered our plans, just everything was dead and we didn't hear anything. So we were, at that time, we found out that we were quite lucky that we got money for that, because we said, okay, we are greenhorn, so they just kind of trick us. But there were more established offices that didn't even get money for that, so we were quite lucky at that time. Well, and then we found out that they started to build, and they built more flat floors that they were allowed, so they had to tear one off again and all these things, so that's what we found out later. But then it was just standing there, and they, well, as you can see, it looks a little bit alike, but also a lot different from our idea and visions we had of it. And I think they kind of rationalized it in a good way, but also some parts we were a little sad that they rationalized that much. But I think in this terms of our naiveness of being really just coming from university, doing this big planning and this whole idealistic plans and ideas of common spaces and how to work together, they of course deleted all that, these common spaces for people to come together, and it pushed of course as much housing in it as they could. Yeah, this idea of the scattered facades kind of corresponds to the colors of the city. They kept that, and on that basis actually we got quite a lot of feedback and some other projects in Tirana. So, but that's quite a long time ago. 2007. That was 6. I mean,
but when we finished the plan, it was in 6?
Yes.
So 7 years ago, and yeah, meanwhile we are still 11 partners, so this 7 years later, after we, as Anne said, we had the chance with this project to earn money, so that was probably why not everybody after university just left and found an office and worked there, and so we just kept friends on Facebook or so, but we really worked together. Was a bit the reason, because we, for at least 1 year, we had the chance to earn money. And then of course there was a big break, because then there was no other project, and we really tried to, with competitions and small projects, to keep up with the project, yes, and 7 years later, we're still 11 partners, and as Anna said in the beginning, we were starting in Hanover, but now, of course, we are in all the different places, and the places still change, of course, also often according to different life situations, because we already have the first city, first a baby, of course, and so things are still in motion, and we have to adapt our business structure with this change of places, and yeah, starting with this naive or maybe this idea of this 11 people coming from university have all studied architectures, all do the same things. We very much soon found out that of course we are different and we have different skills, competence, and even more important, we have all different interests. And so, yeah, we try to, that is very difficult in a business, of course, to say somebody, my business has 11 different people and we are not doing the same, but we are all doing different projects and have different interests. And so, of course, we also have all different roles and into the firm. But we really, what is holding us together is this one mindset that we have. That is maybe something that you also find out that for you, you also have one idea that holds it together. But it's what for us is the basis of our office, that we are still working together, is that we believe more or less in the same things. And that is also what is develop this also as our business strategy, to have a profile that we say that we are doing. That is not, our office is only doing housing architecture or so, but we take this profile and this mindset and say to people that this is what our office is made of, and we call it more with less. Just to explain a bit, because we are of course, we try to make forward architecture and sustainable architecture, and we often are still find very much that sustainable design is often still thought of as energy or resource efficient, but we believe that, of course, sustainable design is going far beyond these ecological values that people often think of. And so we try to create or design systems that are not focused on optimizing only, maybe for instance, this one aspect, or trying to push the functioning aspect of architecture, but is looking for synergies and interactions between very different aspects in architecture, like social or cultural or economic aspects, and we try to bring the best of everything together to create a system that has very many positive effects. And so more with less is trying with this holistic approach that is looking at the different aspects at one time, is trying to match them so that you get the best with a little effort out of it. So more with less is that maybe. And that for us, as I said, next please, has more or less 5 key aspects that are the part of this holistic approach, is that we always try to keep in mind these 5 key aspects, that is retaining and developing a healthy environment. So of course a balance between natural systems and the built environment, because of course human well-being and what is good for the people is only possible when there's also, of course, a healthy environment. And generating qualitative economic growth is, of course, that we don't see the best profit in economic profit, but in the quality of life and in long-term values and not in short-term values. So that's what we believe in. And strengthening social equity and cohesion is, of course, trying to create environments that integrate people, that give access to all resources that are social and people-friendly, of course. And that goes together with developing a cultural identity where people, that create respect, and maybe also engagement for the people to live there. And for us, of course, as architects and planners, aesthetical values are, of course, very important. So, as I said, what we are not be seen as, of course, because we are a network and so many different people, is that we are don't have an architectural formal language where we are that we show, but it is the mindset, and that is not designing objects but systems. And from this way of thinking that we have, we always have a look at what is best for the system. And of course, form and design is very important to us, but it's not the base point of thinking, but it's the one that we try to match with the best system that we try to establish for the project. So from this very theoretical background to the way we work, as Anna already said in the beginning, of course, to be able to work in a way like that and see many different things at the same time and trying to make the best out of it, is of course that we have teams that are always suitable for the specific task, and we do that very early, of course, before the project starts. And so it's not only that we as partners are, of course, with our different competences and interests then in these specific teams, but we also try, or we always have interdisciplinary teams that we try to find for the different projects. And of course we have a lot of cooperation people, so within our own small network of the 11 partners, of course we have a second one that is there as well, and these are the different cooperation partners, and of course a lot of them, they are recurring, and we now within the 8 years we come back to them and we use them for a lot of projects, but we always try to find also other people, so that is the new impulses, and for other things, other people can come to us. So this is the more open network for us. And what is very important for us is that we democratically based. So we don't, of course, within the 11 partners, we don't have a hierarchy, but we are all the same. And so it's that is a lot of organizational effort sometimes. But that is important for us because we think that it is better, for everybody feels better if you can bring in your ideas, and everything is valued more or less at the same time. And we find also that the decisions and so on are, of course, better when everybody is more or less integrated. That doesn't mean that we don't have project leaders or so, but there is a difference between coordination and organization, and that's not somebody that has the last word, more or less. Or some try to.
No, doing architecture is always a process of working together with different experts, but we believe that it's not, we would never be something like Saharadit, like on our building there would never be a name like Big City Förster, because we think it's more featuring each other. Like architecture is featuring different experts and working together, bringing together different expertise. Also urbanism, of course, is the same. So we don't only work together with engineers, but also with people who are from the, thinking about the futurists, yes, Zukunftswissenschaftler, from really off disciplines, we try to get people in to think of things in a different way, because we think that we believe that really gives a big approach on the intensity of projects.
And what we also found out is, that when we do projects, of course, the way we work is, of course, we use everything that everybody else uses, as you can see. But of course, with this being on different locations, we still find that we have to see each other for working together. So that's of course something that we have to coordinate very well with the different timetables. But when we do a project that is interlinked with different locations, that happens for most in Germany, and Rotterdam is also more or less, we are better linked with project sharing. And that means that we always have to plan to see each other for different times. Of course, in between, you can say, okay, you do this, you do that, but then later we have to meet or we finish together or whatever. But that is something that we use a lot. We use a lot of different internet tools, and some already lost track, I think, of what we use in online. But for working together, seeing each other in real life is very important. And that is not only for the project, but also, of course, we have to put very much effort, of course, also in our whole business structure. And that we do with workshops, because that is maybe beside the projects with these things that I showed, markers and things and so on. We of course also try really to work together in workshops when we see each other, because it's only last year with the 3 times, but now it's only 2 times that we see each other for 4 days each. And in these 2 workshops that we have, of course we share information on what we do. We have to talk about organizational stuff like accounts and whatever, but we also find it very important to work together and develop something together, because otherwise you are just living parallel to each other, but we really have to do something together. So in the second one, for instance, do brainstorming or develop exhibition or so that we show in our summer party that we didn't have last year, but this year.
But of course that's also something that we kind of have to learn, like how to discuss with each other and really develop things and not only talk about it. Like we got this professional help actually from our friends who are in consulting.
Yeah,
that's what we were looking for. So it's of course it's always nice to be together. We are also partying, but of course also thinking of what we are doing. And this is something that is maybe also interesting for you, because how can you really find a structure if you don't know anything about it to discuss and really come to certain results and really organize these things that you work after that, you still work on it and you produce something so you can do the next step on the next workshop, because the time we have together is really short of this. So it's a culture of discussion, and of course in the beginning everything was really like going, and then people who like to talk louder and longer always are listened to, and the ones who are not that expressive, they don't get listened to, because we are really different. So but that's something we kind of established on a long-term period, and I think that's maybe something which might be so interesting for you as well, to learn how to come to certain results and really work with them.
So that helps also for the project.
It really sounds quite banal, you know? It sounds quite banal, and in the beginning we were kind of laughing and
they get money for this.
Exactly. We were laughing at it, but actually it really does help to focus.
Yeah, so besides these 2 workshops that we have each year, can you do the next please? We have a lot of different internet tools that we use, and one big thing that we see the profit in as a network is to share data and information. So we have a knowledge basis that we use together that is of course for reference images and a library for different things, of course. So there's big text and whatever, a big knowledge base that we use. And the second thing is, of course, for us, that's important to share the public relations things. We have a portfolio and the website and so on. So, of course, this is a thing that we share online and that everybody can use, of course, and that helps us to go out and say, okay, this is our office and you have to give us a job also. And the second thing is that, of course, what we share together also is the communication about the projects, what we do, and of course about the business. So we have a monthly meeting on WebEx that is a program where you can see each other and where you can share the agenda and so it's a little bit more than Skype, but that we have once a month that is more or less for, of course, talking about the business things like accounts or but also of course about the website or what is important for everybody, and to sometimes also have a little bit more time to talk about projects, because once a week we meet on Tuesday morning for more or less an hour just to update on what is happening during the week on the project, so that we are up to date what the others are doing. So that is how we work together, and the output, of course, is, as I said, we are so many different people, big mindset with holistic and approach and everything. So, of course, our portfolio and our fields of work can not only be one, but is of course what we developed is 4 different fields of work where everybody finds himself represented. And so the different fields of work, just to show you a bit what we do, is from different scales, of course, and different programs. And so the first is called City XLMS. This is everything that the people that from even those studying architecture went a bit more in the direction of doing urban design and urban planning. So we have projects that are more from a regional scale, but often on then in the scale of urban design, or even on a project that try to foster public space interventions or the participation projects or so. And so one example is, for instance, a competition that we did already now 2 years ago. It's in Frankfurt, and Nordweststadt is like this very common areas built in the 60s that now have degraded public space and a lot of social problems, and they with this competition try to ask for, of course, a new concept for the public space, but also new housing in order to get other typologies so that the whole social structure would be more mixed. And we won the second prize for it. And what maybe is a little bit this more with less ideas that we try to with the public space and the underground parking. When this had to be also bettered and it was cut and then added a new functional and programmatic element, and so that when with this trick of integrating something that at the same time betters the situation that is there, it was also good. The public space was of course bettered.
Well, the next aspect is of course housing, and we are thinking about, you can see the house in Tirana, that was the first house, and we are thinking, or at least we try to think different in the terms of housing and how can you live in the future. So you can see all these different projects, and the one that we just realized 2 years ago is the so-called rubber house in Almere in the Netherlands. It was based on a competition as well. You can see the process of architecture. That's of course, which is quite annoying sometimes, are really long. So we won the competition in 2006, and then in 2011, finally, after a lot of replanning, this rubber house for a private owner was realized. And the terms of more with less is that, of course, it is an experimental house. Because the competition then was also so-called, in Dutch it's eenvoud, that means it's like simple housing. So this rubber house is all prefabricated wood elements, and then of course the rubber is it's a kind of key study project because of course that has never been built before, and you can only do things like that with an owner or a developer who really wants it.
We don't know how it changes over time, when the rain does and when the sun goes.
But we found out that it is quite sustainable and working really well, and the person or couple who lives there is really happy, and which is funny as well. Like in the process you discuss with somebody like that, he finds his black house with the, of course, cut where he has his terrace, and then he starts to really try to interpret the design, and everything is black and white and gray and something like that. And of course it has a kind of industrial charm, because you think of how the quality of living should be, and of course it should be a low-cost house. In the end it was quite more expensive than we expected in the beginning, but it's like everything is on top of the ceilings and not integrated in the ceiling, all the tubes and pipes and electricity.
But that was also what the owner wanted. He was given the house just as the raw house, and then he could do the rest. Architecture for the knowledge-based society is some people are very much focusing on projects that are either have to do with schools or museums or so, but that are also maybe in change because schools are not what they were before, but there are of course also new pedagogical ideas and theories. And so one partner of us, she's really developing also projects that where it is thought of from the beginning on to have the space also as one important element in the education of people. So that is why we also thought that this is an own category that of course we, with the facing changes in society, we have to think more and more about how really the change of how we learn and what we do while learning for a long time and not only for the study time is a very important aspect, and that is what more or less knowledge-based society means. And one example that is not a school but is also a museum is a museum that we did in Germany, in Seesen, which is in the Harz Mountains, a little bit south from here. Where it's for the small city, but they have the Steinway, the piano company. They have all the collection there, and so they wanted a museum for that Steinway. And so what was interesting, that is of course it's a refurbishment of an existing building, and of course it was not only then the architectural design, but also the conception of the exhibition and the integration of the graphic design or other things, and really also designing objects for the exhibition, like the longest site of the piano site in the whole world.
Well, and then we, as we found out earlier, we thought the aspect of consultancy is also quite challenging, and of course as urban planners, the big part is consultancy. So these diagrams you see are all parts of we always call it phase zero. So what do you really need to change, to do a planning, a sustainable planning or a robust planning for a city, for urban development. And it's like talking and bringing together a lot of people and talking about concepts and ideas with different experts and of course different participants. Well, and one thing we did for the last 3 years was when, of course, comes out the city of Berlin with the airport Tegel, or with what to do after Tegel will be closed, maybe soon.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Of course, it was. Everybody knows that it was supposed to be closed already. So we were one of 6 teams who were actually consulting the city, thinking from different starting points about what to do with the terminal, with the whole space, the white space in the city, and the terminal of Tegel. Yeah, this is a picture from the very beginning, and everybody knows that there is actually a master plan now that is based on all the ideas, that was not planned by one office, but that is based on all the ideas that the 6 offices gave into this cooperative workshop process.
And our task was the wild card, or was called the wild card, because the others, they had like landscape or extension of the existing city, or big events. So what would be if Olympia would come? Could they go on Tegel, for instance? And we had the wild card, so that's a bit what is missing or what could happen, and it's not.
It's like a thinking out of the box.
And so that's what the Joker, of course, means, because we could do what the others were not allowed to.
Well, that's all of us, and we kind of thank you.